The next important transforming experience for me was to begin to really feel and appreciate the extraordinary compassion that was extended to me as a victim of this attack, as the relative of someone who had been killed. New York City set up, within several weeks, a victim assistance center on the 94th Pier. It's a huge, huge open building the size of several football fields. And when you went there was just such a sense and such an awareness of people who were donating their time and their effort, restaurants and food companies in New York who were donating food, and all too many times I found myself arriving at the center at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was only when I smelled some food inside the Family Assistance Center that I remembered I hadn't eaten all day. One of the most amazing experiences was maybe the second or third time I was there. There was a wall that ran the length, almost the entire length of the pier, where all of us had hung photographs of our relatives. And the second or third time I was back there were hundreds of teddy bears under the photographs. And one of the workers in the center said, "Those teddy bears all came here from Oklahoma City. They'd been left at the bombing site in Oklahoma, where Bud lost his daughter. And the people in Oklahoma City just thought that now you might need them a lot more than they did." And again, I had a sense of connection and a sense of compassion that crossed boundaries. And it was for me a glimmer of hope that there was energy in the world that we could put to the very hard task of ending, beginning to end, the cycle of violence that had led to what took my sister's life. There were other really small things that still bring a smile to my face and my heart. Once I was arriving at the pier, and the cab driver, when he saw where he was letting me off and saw the sign over it, just turned to me and he said, "There's no fare for this ride. I just want to make the trip with you." After my sister's memorial service, which we held on her birthday, which was almost exactly a month after the attack, my cousins and I went out to lunch, and when the restaurant learned where we had been, they said, "Let us take care of you. There's no charge for this meal." There was an extraordinary sense of good, positive energy for which I am deeply thankful. I know it got me through. I actually don't know how I got through some of what I got through, but I remember myself as a kind of walking zombie. I remember myself just not knowing what unbelievable thing I was going to have to do next, but literally feeling supported by strangers. And that got me through a lot in those first weeks. One of the things I felt compelled to do next, when officials in New York allowed us, was to go down and visit the World Trade Center site. I asked both of my parents if they wanted to go with me, and they both said no. I'm not sure my father physically could have done it, but my mother was very clear that emotionally she couldn't do it. So I turned to my best friend, who's also named Laura, who was also a very good friend of my sister's. And she agreed to go with me. I have only fleeting memories of what actually happened when I made that journey. But my friend wrote an essay after we had been there, which she gave me and which I've kept, and which now that I'm able to look at it and read it, I really treasure, because I know that she captured so much of the same feelings I had on that journey. And I know that that journey too, while it didn't help me to heal, it helped push me along this path I think I'm on. And what I want to do is just read a little bit of what my friend wrote. My friend called her essay, "I Remember Better Days." She writes, "I was recently taken on a special tour of Ground Zero organized by the Mayor's Office for the Families of the World Trade Center victims. We met with the other families in a special briefing area at the Family Assistance Center at Pier 94. 50 family members at a time are escorted to the site 3 times a day by ferry boat. I was there with one of my oldest and dearest friends, whose sister had been killed. We had no hope that she would be found alive, since we'd learned her exact location and assumed that her body had been incinerated and would never be found. We were escorted down the pier to the ferry for a 15-minute boat ride to the Battery Park City. During the ride, most of us sat silently, trying to brace ourselves for the unbraceable, or spoke quietly about other things, trying to pass the time. The sun was shining, the air was clean and crisp. On any other day, the boat ride would have been a wonderful excursion. We were escorted. As the ferry docked, we began to see the peripheral damage, the blackened office buildings with windows blown out, pieces of the World Trade Center jammed into the side of one building, smoke still rising in the air above the site. We were escorted to a viewing area at Ground Zero. As we walked by, the firemen, sanitation men, construction workers, and police working at the site, they stopped what they were doing, removed their helmets and hard hats, and stood at attention to honor us. Then we reached Ground Zero, and there are no words. There are no pictures, no videos, nothing that can adequately describe the devastation. Everyone by this time, including many in our team, were sobbing openly. I was prepared to cry. I was not prepared for the other physical responses I had. I couldn't catch my breath no matter how hard I tried. I couldn't get air down into my lungs, and every 10 seconds or so I would gasp and try to breathe. My chest tightened like a drum, and my throat muscles constricted, making it impossible to talk. I felt that at any moment I would pass out in shock or die from lack of oxygen. For some of the families, it seemed to provide some closure, particularly for the ones who had been holding on to some hope. It was clear standing there that there were no more survivors, and that death must have been virtually instantaneous. For my friend and I, it only made everything that had happened more incomprehensible. As we looked at what was a city of wreckage, we kept realizing that someone had done this on purpose. Someone had intended to create this havoc. It was not an act of God. It was not an earthquake, hurricane, or accident, but an intentional, malevolent act of a few human beings with a deep-rooted and unfathomable hatred of America. I have no idea how long we stood there. We were suspended in time. I've seen and experienced something up close and personal that I never expected to see or experience: the face of war. Over and over in my head, I hear the words we chanted at demonstrations against the war in Vietnam. What do we want? Peace. When do we want it? Now. Then the way to achieve that goal seems straightforward. Bring our soldiers home. Now we are home, and I have no idea how to get there. I just know we have no other choice.